Mr. Bert BOUWMEESTER, welcome to our Congress Mediabox. So you are a reporter on organizing intercultural and interreligious activities. And in your report, you propose a range of tools for use by local authorities and also a toolkit. Let's start from that point. Could you please explain us what's that toolkit?
Well, the toolkit, you can imagine that there are a lot of experiences throughout Europe, throughout the members of this Congress, about dealing with radicalization in its very first appearances, until also when it reaches a point that you might conclude, well, radicalization or intercultural and faith dialogue is becoming a very tense subject in my community, that you need some instruments to use to further to stimulate the dialogue. And it's difficult, especially for local authorities, to find the instruments. What can I do? Where can I find it? Who can help me using it? So the idea behind the toolkit is that when you are able to find at a designated place the experiences that exist throughout Europe, throughout the members of this Congress, that will facilitate you in your role as a local or regional authority in dealing with how to go about with this intercultural, interfaith dialogue. As there is a need. There is unrest. Of course, all the current developments in Europe, the radicalization, the feelings of unsafety that people experience, they often lead not to questions on the national level. They always lead to questions or a need to act on a local level. So there is also a need for a local level to be aware of where can I find the relevant experiences that may be useful for me. So that is the toolkit.
And to go a bit further, what will comprise toolkit? Can you give some examples?
It will comprise more than 100, maybe more than 200 experiences, documents, background documents, all the information you might need to be aware of what is exactly the topic. What are the pitfalls that are going to occur to me when I try to start such a dialogue? What will be my role as a representative of a local authority, or as the local authority as a state organization, you might say. And of course we have the separation of church and state, so we have to be careful as local authorities and regional authorities what our involvement can look like. But at least we could facilitate, and we have an interest in the facilitation of these kind of processes, because it will lead at the lowest level, at our community level, at distinguishing between the developments which are contributing to our society, the manifold of experiences that exist, the manifold of beliefs that are part of our community, that perhaps want to take a bigger role in our community, but also on the aspects that are perhaps a danger. People who are in the process of radicalizing. I don't know if that's the correct term.
Yeah,
what you need is access to relevant experiences, relevant documents, who can help you really a bit to take the first steps, even if it be picking up the phone and trying to contact the people who have the relevant experience elsewhere, and talk to them and say, well, I'm thinking about the next, our involvement, can I use you as a kind of a feedback instrument, how to go about and make use of your experience. So the toolkit should provide enter to this information.
It's the one way to organize intercultural and interreligious activities, for example, let's say.
Yes.
What are your other recommendations that you mentioned in the report to manage interculturality and interreligious?
Well, there are quite a lot of recommendations. The main point would be that it is relevant that you act in this field of interest, where most local authorities and regional authorities accept that it is when there is when there is need for a dialogue, that it is a state organization dialogue. And what we really need is that local and regional authorities sense their role and pick up their role to enhance this dialogue on a local level, whichever form it can take. And in that regard, it is important that you make use of this local situation. With that in mind, we also propose that each and every member state provides for a translation of this toolkit in its own language, and that it is brought to the regional and local authorities, accompanied with relevant text that focus on the specific situation in that country, for instance, addressing, for instance, the possibilities for funding, for making use of tools or developing tools. In that way we try to reach access to various instruments in a very specific way that is measured on the situation in each and every of the 47 member states of the Council.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Rapporteur.
Thank you.
Thank you.